the next in a series of town coffee chats that we put together to give our community some insight into what's happening with respect to COVID-19 in our community. And today joining me, I have Bill Lidster, who's the manager of Conservation Parks for Credit Valley Conservation. Bill, thank you for joining us. I've got Ray Osmond, General Manager of Community Services for the town of Orangeville. And I have Councillor Grant Peters of the town of Orangeville, also Chair of Sustainable Orangeville, and board member representing the town on Credit Valley Conservation's board. So welcome today to all of you. Grant, maybe I'll start off with you. You just came out of this morning at Credit Valley Conservation Board meeting. So can you share with us any insights, any information that came out of that this meeting this morning?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Credit Valley, like every other organization, has had to adapt to this whole thing, especially given how many people they have in the field. They have a large office in Mississauga, so they often have a lot of people shuffling around. By all accounts, it's been going pretty well. You know, they're in the process of sort of a continuity plan and keeping things as up to date and flowing as they can in that regard. Challenges, obviously, you know, with all of the tree plantings being put off, with most of the parks being closed. That's sort of a CVC mandate at the moment. They would technically still be allowed to be open given the provincial rules, but you know, I think they've taken a very conservative approach, which is probably for the best in this time. We've heard of large gatherings of people in other areas in green spaces, and I know we're going to sort of talk about that recreation aspect today, but all said, I think they're doing a very good job of managing this thing, and there's no sort of specific news that came out of the board meeting this morning other than that things are being maintained and are on track, and if and when, you know, things start to relax, they're building a plan to roll it out in a fashion that's safe for everybody.
Right, great. So Bill, Grant talked about staffing, and I guess this has been a good opportunity for you to get a jump on spring maintenance and cleanup that has to go on, and trail maintenance. So I'm sure all those things have been carrying on. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, actually, we just started doing that Wednesday of this week after we got the green light from the province about some other essential services and people that were coming back to work, landscaping and everything. So that included some trail maintenance and everything. So we have brought on a limited amount of staff to start working on some of the maintenance and getting the trails cleaned up and getting ready for our staged approach that we can talk about a little bit later.
Right, right. So this, you know, staged or phased in reopening of the economy is going to be going on for weeks or months now. I guess a good part of this is that exterior or you know, issues with respect to tourism are ones that are probably going to be opened up first, right? I mean, it's problematic having indoor events until some further information from public health, but so you must be speculating that sometime in the next little while there's going to be a reopening of some of the parks, and this is leading you to some of this updating work that's going on now.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I can do is I can share with you our staged approach that we're looking at for Credit Valley with no dates tied to it, because as we all know, we're going to be working with the provincial directives and basing our opening in stages on that. So we have a solid plan, and it leaves us room to put some adaptive management processes in place that if the timelines get bumped up, then we're ready for the next phase, and so on and so on. So again, we are going to take a very slow, progressive approach because it could be a ripple effect to the community and to other CAs. So everyone knows Terry LaRue, our senior manager at Credit Valley, and Terry and I have been working behind the scenes with our other CAs around the area, Toronto region, Hamilton region, Halton region, the Grand River Conservation Authority, to look at what one another are doing, because we know that it has a ripple effect on what one conservation does to another. So we had that meeting yesterday, so it sounds like we're all on the same page. So again, for stage one, it's going to be very passive use. We'll get our trails open. All our buildings and washrooms will stay closed. And then as stage two, then we'll look at having some limited services. We'll have those washrooms available. We'll have water access on the water. For stage one, we'll allow people to shoreline fish.
Right.
And then again, depending on the group sizes from the province, then we'll look at in stage two having picnics, people allowed to come out for a picnic and small group gatherings. And then further down the line, when we come to stage three, then again, we have two phases in our stage three because of our two conservation areas, Bell Fountain and Badlands, that get loved to death with several visitors coming there. So again, we're going to pilot a couple of things there down at Badlands and Bell Fountain and look at having timed access where people can come in for a couple hours, and then we can limit the number of people that are coming into our parks. So we are prepared for stage one on having an influx of people into the conservation areas, but we do have some measures in place that how many people is too many. And it all depends once people get on site, how they flow through the properties on the number of people that we will allow in to the conservation areas. And with some of the trails, as we discussed, Sandy, is that Island Lake, the boardwalks and bridges are narrow in some spots, but we do have we call them jut outs where people could get off to the side and let other groups go by. So again, we're going to be we want to work with our users and say, guys, we have to do this together, and it's a collaborative approach. So we're hoping that everyone can work with us to keep our parks open, because the last thing we want to do is that after when the province opens stage one, we don't want to have to go backwards.
Right. I just want to kind of reiterate how fortunate we are to have a facility like Island Lake in our backyard. And, over the years that I've lived here, it just continues to evolve from, the maple sugar bush to Memorial Forest to, the fishing derby and all, and of course the bridge and trail system that's been completed several years ago. It's just wonderful. You got a couple of exciting projects that you're working on. I know the Playscape is underway, and I know there was some planning for a covered bridge. So can you enlighten us a little bit on progress on those two fronts?
Yeah, for sure. And again, we want to say thanks to the community at Island Lake, like you said, Sandy, is that we've had tremendous buy-in from the community, the service clubs out there, the Rotary Club, the Lions Club, the Friends of Island Lake, and the local funeral home that has the Memorial Forest here, Dodds McNair, and our town of Mono, Dufferin County. So the support is there, and they've all contributed to the natural playscape. So we're really excited about that. And I know in a previous town hall, when you were talking to our education person, Andrew Kett, there is that we're getting a little bit creative in the natural playground. So there's going to be several elements, and I'm not going to give them all away because we want to entice people to come out once we get it open and people can use it. Yeah. But we have tons of elements from accessible. We have an audio component of it that we've been working with the County of Dufferin for the life cycle of a monarch butterfly, where people with all kinds of accessibility issues, they can touch stuff, feel stuff. So we're adding all those components. We've also consulted with the Credit River Métis to have a component in the natural playground for the Indigenous folks. And that's a hide and seek component of it. We have a climbing wall, a real cool climbing wall that represents the Niagara Escarpment, so the kids feel like they're climbing the escarpment.
Excellent.
And a water feature. And some of the other stuff, as you mentioned, the covered bridge. We just started construction of the covered bridge before COVID-19, so We do have the stringers and everything in place. And so once we get the green light to bring our capital projects guys back in, we'll continue with the construction with that.
Excellent. That's great. Well, it's again, I just thank you to all the hard work that you've done over the years, and you're right. The community really has embraced Island Lake, and it's really a fantastic asset for our area. Recreational asset and a tourism asset as well. So it's great. So Ray, not only do you have responsibility for trail systems in our town, but also for so many, indoor facilities as well. So can you just touch on the outdoor portion of Orangeville Community Services? Our trails have remained open, correct? And
That's correct. Yes, it is. Yep. Before I start, though, I want to say to Bill, great job, Bill. Matter of fact, I think I might come by for a bit of fun because it sounds really like a lot of fun over there. A lot of things going on, and as the mayor says, the Island Lake is a huge asset, not just to Orangeville, but to the whole region, and great destination. As the mayor says, yeah, we have a lot of parks, of course, a lot of playgrounds in particular, a lot of facilities, and just to go on a few things. First off, all of our parks have remained open, parks per se. So that means that a person can go in and walk around the parks and that kind of thing, but you can't go on the amenities, i.e. the playground structures, benches, picnic tables, slides, that kind of thing. So stay off the amenities, but certainly walk in the parks and walk on the trails. One of the things that we're doing with our trail piece right now, as we look at these things of gradual openings and so on, is that and with the hopefully the warming of our temperature and not snowing, if things warm up, then the question will be, how do we keep maintaining social distancing? And we need to take a look at how we recover that way in terms of, well, maybe do we do things in certain areas where you have narrow walkways to encourage people to go one way and not to have two-way walking and that kind of thing. So we need to take a look at how we do that. The bigger piece for us that we're having to deal with right now is our sport groups. As you know, we have lots of large green spaces, play fields, soccer fields, baseball fields, softball fields, and they're quite anxious, of course, to move forward. The unfortunate thing is that we do not have a plan for how that would work. And in order for us to open facilities, there's two things. One is the facilities themselves had to be ready to open, but we also had that sport groups to have some kind of a protocol or direction from the health sector on how we actually do things with sport. Examples would be, for instance, we're working with tennis right now. Tennis is looking at how they start up. Tennis Canada has given some guidelines for social distancing, and that's probably more easy to do with tennis than it is to do with a soccer program. Likewise with baseball. Baseball has, there are parts of a baseball game, as we all know, where you can certainly easily social distance. But when you get up to the bat and when you have to go from base to base, it's problematic in terms of how you social distance and how do you reach out to have someone out on the plate. So it's interesting how these sports look at how they go forward, and we working with those guys to see how we do that, because that's quite a big piece for us in terms of opening facilities. At this point now, though, from a facility as similar to what Bill is going through, we are maintaining our buildings, maintaining our facilities, maintaining all the assets. But if we do not have games and activities on those facilities, not unlike Bill, we will keep washrooms closed. The buildings associated with those outdoor facilities remain closed. An example, just this morning we were talking about how we would actually mow our grass. We would mow grass on a soccer field, as an example, to not 5 inches, but 3 inches, because we're not going to have a lot of people on those fields. We may have people on the fields walking around, but to play a game is a different thing. So we're looking at how we actually ramp up, if you would, our facilities to have people access to facilities in the future. At this point now, with all the things going on and watching what the health sector is saying in phase one, and we're potentially probably in a further phase down the road, we would just be maintaining our assets, keeping our crew level at a spring level, if you would. We have a spring crew that starts up in April, and we're using a small crew right now. And decisions on where we go with that will come from what the health sector is saying in terms of protocols and how we can open up facilities. So trails themselves will be maintained. An exciting thing for us, of course, we have plans in our capital budget to move forward with a section of trails in our capital budget to do the section of trail from Veterans Way down to just short of Broadway, and also to go around the railway line, if you would, and connect up to Blind Line. That's a big project for us this year. We're looking at other projects depending on what happens with COVID and how that moves forward. But we're still moving forward with that, and we're doing the planning piece on that right now to get that piece up and running and hopefully get that trail developed. One of the things about our trail system going forward is we're working on a standard to be at least 3 meters wide to give a lots of distance for people, and that is working out, of course, in our advantage. It will be more distance for people walking in the future and cycling in the future on these trail systems. So that's exciting stuff for us, and it's just a wait and see, I guess, to a certain degree with how we open up our facilities.
I think the sign makers must be licking their chops right now, because you guys are all going to be having to put copious signage out there to remind people distancing and maybe direction on some of these paths. So it's interesting. I was thinking maybe Bill and Ray, you can collaborate, because on the baseball paths, if you put a baseball glove at the end of a fishing pole, you might be able to tag somebody out that way.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
Or fly fish with your glove, maybe, and hit the runner. I don't know.
And
some games. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah, and again, it's one of those things that we don't. It's not challenges, it's opportunities, and it's an opportunity for us to start thinking outside the box. Maybe pilot a couple of things that we were thinking about doing, but this is the right timing to implement those. We have to get creative, and we have to work together to make it happen.
Yeah, and it's kind of exciting for the outdoor type of recreation, because that may be all we have for the next little while, and so it's going to really encourage people to be out in the great outdoors, and that's a good opportunity for conservation authorities and for our community services people to foster those kind of things. And so, Grant, long before you came on council, you were involved and interested in things like active transportation, about fostering a better trail system in town, about cycling and all those things. So all those issues really are things that are going to continue to come in front of council, and I think you and I are both aligned on a lot of this, that we need to continue to develop our trail systems, and it makes for a more livable environment for us to be in.
Yeah, I think some of the timing worked out a little bit because we approved the SNAP and the Cycling and Trails Master Plan last year, so that gives us a really good guidance in terms of how to move some of these projects forward. So getting more people outside, like you said, everybody's itching to do more stuff outside and to break out of the confines, so to speak. So I think that's going to be very good for the community to get out and explore a little more, obviously with certain protocols, that sort of thing. But again, having those documents in place, being able to build on those, maybe even improve some of the standards to account for some of this, going to 3 meters instead of 2.5 wide, something like this. More trail systems, more space dedicated to outdoor activity. That's sort of the things that I've been pushing for a long time. So this may just be a bit of an accelerator of that concept.
Yeah, and the connectivity of various jurisdictions is something that's going to come up. Bill, you've got the chair or the president of CVC has got this Credit Valley Trail project that has become top of mind and is something that the CVC is tackling now. I'm wondering about how do we connect and get over Island Lake, because Highway 10 is an impediment, right? And it's a safety issue, and I'm hoping at some point there's money available maybe to do an overpass or an underpass or something that allows people to safely cross Highway 10, because it's an issue. Yeah, but I back to just thinking about the trail system, Grant. You've also been involved in urban harvest as well, and I think there's opportunities for us along the trail system to maybe do some more of that. It was funny because in the past few months there was a couple of complaints about what people were calling weed gardens in one neighborhood, and we said, hey lady, that's actually a pollinator garden, and we're actually trying to promote, this natural habitat environment, and we want to foster more of that type of thing along these trail systems. So
I think a lot of these concepts are coming together nicely as people spend more time outdoors. There's a greater appreciation for it. More people are growing their own gardens this year, so people will start to notice, the flora and fauna that exist in Orangeville, and combining that with the trail systems and that sense of community and that food security. So all of these things are kind of coming together, and I think people have had some time to reflect on some of the changes that have been occurring during this whole thing, in regards to those issues. So food security and recreation and open space, native species, all this kind of thing. So it really all kind of bubbles up together, and I agree. One reinforces the other, and this is the time to accelerate that even more.
Yeah, we late last year, we joined the Bee City Canada, program, and with that, we'll be fostering more pollinator gardens, and continuing to make sure that our bee population is healthy and strong. Without bees, we got big trouble. So, and there was a dip in population back a few years ago. I think it's since recovered, which is good. But having something I learned talking to the people that were pushing this idea in Orangeville, I couldn't believe it, but they said there was 800 species of bees in the world, and I found that remarkable that there's that many, but it's an incredible diverse world we live in, and it's huge. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised, but it did seem shocking to me that many. Anyway, I just wanted to offer you guys just one more chance to kind of wrap up and share your thoughts about what's going on in the outdoor. Ray, do you have just a further thought you might want to share?
Well, before I forget it, and something dear to Grant's heart, I'm sure, is we're happy to report the community garden is up and running, and their schedules are all going well. Talking back and forth this morning, the last couple of days with great volunteer that we all know, Sylvia Bradley, who's working with the team as well, and with our staff. And things are moving along. Food bank are getting in there and getting their work done. So, and speaking of signs, quite a big sign up there, new sign, and of course with all this COVID stuff. And I think just to touch on the sign for a quick sec is that we're going to find ourselves probably some different signs now, going from a closure sign, hopefully in the future, to, well, if you're on this facility, you should do this, and something else. The social distancing, more information, more education to keep people on these spaces and enjoying themselves. One of the things that we're all trying to do here, guys, is try to create a healthy, active community, and that's the umbrella we work under. And every opportunity that comes up for us to do that, we're going to do it. And I think Bill alluded to it earlier, is that there's huge opportunity here. I think the future of recreation, outdoors, all the activities, whether it's tree planting or gardening, whatever the case would be, I think you're going to see an increase in all that kind of thing, because one of the safest places to be and the healthiest places to be is outdoors. And as people move forward, I think we're going to take a different look at how we operate going forward, particularly in the outdoors, but also from an indoor-outdoor perspective. So I look forward to that. This thing is unprecedented, no doubt, but I think our future is something that we get to right now. And if you look at a clean slate and move from a clean slate, I think you get an opportunity here. And we're prepared and really working hard at it to try to move forward in that regard. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, it's interesting, thinking about planning going forward, because this is a clean slate, isn't it, Ray? I mean, really have to start speculating about what the new reality is going to be, and it's there's no history for this, so there's going to be a lot of changes. I think maybe more so in interior recreational facilities than exterior, but it's going to be challenging times, and it's certainly going to be affecting budgets and fiscal responsibility of municipalities, and even the Conservation Authority, I'm sure, is going to be looking at the fiscal realities of what this means going forward. I mean, we're going to have a drop off probably in income all around, and it's going to be interesting to see how that rebounds and how we can, absorb that. So Bill, give us some final thoughts here about some positivity. We need lots of that.
Yeah, well, so again, we just want to reinforce to Grant's comments on this is the time that collaboration and looking at our trails and everything to have that active transportation and all those trail links so we link our communities together and spread people out more, I think is going to be real important moving forward. And again, one other thing I'd like to give away about the natural playground too is that we have a half-a-kilometer trail on the perimeter of the natural playground that have a plan to flood in the wintertime to have a skating trail out there. We've had one on the lake with limited success because of the high winds out on the lake. So that's another little tidbit for the natural playground.
That's great.
And lastly, again, I'd like to thank all the frontline workers and essential workers out there, and a special thanks to the police services, the conservation officers, and the bylaw enforcement. And lastly, the community for respecting our closures of the parks, because again, it's been very good, and we're anxious to get the parks open for everyone. So let's work together, and once they are open, let's keep the parks open.
Great. And Councillor Peters, final thoughts on encouraging everybody?
Yeah, no, I think it's a time when people like to get outdoors, and I think based on this conversation, those opportunities will be growing. I'm glad Ray brought up the gardens. That was a big success story. That took a lot of pressure from the community and politicians and staff to get the government to make those rules regarding the community garden. On a similar note, Sustainable Orangeville is very close to opening the seed library again. Of course, it wouldn't take place at the library, but for those budding gardeners, whether at the community scale or in your own backyard, this is a program where you can exchange seeds. You don't always use the entire pack that you buy, or you don't need much, so you don't want to invest in a huge number of seeds. So we're very close to having something set up that would align with all of the COVID rules. Which again will get people outside and growing their own healthy food. And I think that all of these things come together just to promote an active lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle. And the social piece has been a bit difficult, but as Bill said, with hopefully warmer weather, we'll be on our way. And these things are going to open up in succession with the intent of not having to retract them again. So slow and steady, but I think we're on the upswing here.
Right. And just another thought about urban harvesting. I think it's a win-win situation there, because you're out, doing something positive. I think I saw an email from Heather Hayes, the food bank director, the other day. I think she had quantified, I think it was $2,600 in value of produce that they had harvested last year to benefit the food bank. So. And that really was sunlight, water, and some elbow grease, and a little bit of money involved in seeds and what have you. But the payback is enormous, and we need to start trying to convince people to do some of this in their backyards, Grant. And I know, hopefully, council can consider that maybe in budgeting going forward, that we can help people to embrace that idea. I think it'd be. Again, it's a win-win there for sure. So anyway, gentlemen, we're just about, we're at 30 minutes right now. I really appreciate your time this morning. It's thank heavens that Mr. Ford and the rest of the, upper tier government is starting to open things up for us. Let's hope the summer brings more of this, both on an economic front and on a recreational front, and really looking forward to hearing more from Mr. Ford in the coming days. And I know that both Ray and Bill are going to be very busy coming up very shortly when those announcements happen. So thanks again for joining us today, and all the best to all of you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. All the best.
Yeah. Thank you.